What's up, boys and girls? This is Jamil for Black and Yellow Movies, and I recently watched the independent film Super Dark Times. So this film involves two teenage boys who have been best friends for life, Zach and Josh. Now one day in a park, a random accidental act of violence drives a wedge between them. It leads them down a rabbit hole of violence and paranoia, and it leaves you with a very shaky third act, and this movie is phenomenal in its storytelling. So it's very interesting. It's a random, it's random in a sense, but it is an accidental act of violence that they do try to cover up for fear of what's going to happen to them. You know, they're young, they're teenagers about to graduate high school, they're worried about their future, they don't know what's going to happen. One of them has a love interest, and you know, it's one of those ideas where you're very scared of the world around you and what it holds. And so in doing this, it kind of drives a wedge between the two teenagers, and one of them is, you know, very paranoid at what's going on, and the other one, who trying to stay calm, you know, reacts in a very different way. And so that dynamic on screen is very interesting to see. The cover-up is a small part of what the larger theme of this story is. You know, it's not necessarily a coming-of-age film, but it does deal with friendship, and it also deals with, like I said, paranoia, and that's a huge part of this film. The main character, I can't remember the actor's name, but he plays, I believe, Zach, and he is the paranoid one of the bunch. He's worried about what's gonna happen. You know, he has a love interest in the story, and she's kind of cluing in like, okay, now you're acting a little different, what's going on? You know, he lives at home with his mom, and he's, you know, single child, the dad's not in the picture, and she's kind of asking, okay, you know, what happened to your hand? You know, what's going on? She's trying to clue things in, and then, you know, the news happens. Oh, so-and-so disappeared from school. We don't know where he's at. We're thinking it's a runaway from home. So all these things kind of escalate, and it's kind of this tightening coil the whole time you're watching this, and you can see the character just get, you know, more and more wound up, and you know, okay, something's gonna happen eventually, but it comes out in a different way than you would expect. There's definitely some thriller elements to it. The odd thing about this film, though, is that it's very artistic in its flourishes. One of the things I mean by that is the look and tone of the film. You can definitely see that this is perhaps in a Midwestern town in the early 90s during fall season. And they don't even explain that to you in terms of, you know, exposition, like just saying it, hey, this is where we are, this is that, this is this. Just the look of the film explains it to you, and you get all these things, like a guy pulls out his pager and you're like, oh, like this is definitely not the, you know, 2005, 2006. And then you have, you know, kind of the punk rock look where a guy has a beanie on with the colored hair under it, and you know, they're riding their bikes around, you know, and they don't have cell phones where they're texting each other and doing all this stuff. And so it's very tight when it comes to like the context and the whereabouts of this film, and I really enjoy that aspect of it. But there is, like I said, a little bit of thriller elements, and that's just kind of like the icing on the cake to the backdrop of the film. The camera movement, the cinematography is probably the sweet spot of the film. There's definitely some amazing editing in this film, and I know you love editing as much as I do when it's done correctly, and this one is done phenomenal. The editing in this film is fluid. It is just to the point where it just stands a level above, because not only does it have the thriller, the suspenseful elements, it has the technicalities to go behind it. The camera movements are extremely swift. There's a lot of tracking shots, and there's a lot of times where the camera's moving slow enough on two people talking that you barely notice that it's really moving until they cut the scene and you're like, wait, no, the camera was moving pretty slow. And then there's also times where, you know, at the beginning of the film, they're highlighting, you know, just the mouths of the characters talking back and forth, and that adds another, just a unique dynamic to it. I loved that part of the film. Probably, you know, one of my favorite parts of the film, well, definitely one of my favorite parts of the film was the camera, you know, the editing, the movements, the cinematography, everything about it was just phenomenal on that front. And I definitely would recommend just that aspect alone to film aficionados, people who like to look at things that have, you know, a lot of eye candy. The actors did phenomenal. The actor who plays Zach he makes you believe that their lives are on trial. There's certain scenes where he's next to his locker and he kind of like hides his face and looks, and his eyes are so intense you can just kind of feel it radiating off the screen. And you know, Josh, who was in the recent series The Ozark starring Jason Bateman, he was phenomenal as a, you know, kind of this awkward oddball kid, but you know, they've been best friends forever, so it's like they have that chemistry there. They have the chemistry there, but you can tell there is something off about him. And not just by his mannerisms and how he acts, but also just how the camera moves around him, how it focuses on his face at certain times, and you wonder, okay, why did they choose to do that? what's going on with that? And so the chemistry between these two characters, and then the supporting cast, like Zach's love interest in the story, she's phenomenal as well. And she kind of adds a depth to it that, you know, is kind of heartwarming. And she's so likable as this character who doesn't even get a crazy amount of screen time, but the way the screenwriter and director decide to showcase her on screen and her relationship with Zach is very potent. It's very, you know, not necessarily unique, but I definitely came away feeling, you know, a different side of, you know, the love that a lot of movies don't really, you know, give me.
What's your final score?
My final score for this, I want to say about an 8. I'm gonna give it an 8.5. I'm gonna give it an 8.5 out of 10, just because at Black and Yellow Movies, I am the style enthusiast. And this one had so much style. Like, I'm almost getting to the point where I'm like style over substance. There is only one thing about this film that I thought they could have did better. The final third act, although I didn't necessarily mind it, I think that's what's ultimately going to throw people away from this movie after they watch it. I've read some reviews and some people were like, okay, it kind of fell apart in the third act. Some people say, oh, it was just kind of a quick way to resolve it. I think it was a solid way to resolve it. I don't think it was thrown together. I think it was, you know, good for what they were trying to do, but I also think there could have been a little bit more. It could have been a little bit more expansive, and they could have made a movie that really stood the test of time and really could have stood out versus, you know, the ending that they went with. But it's not a huge knock on the film itself. So 8.5 out of 10 is my final score. I really enjoyed this film. I would definitely recommend it. It is on Netflix streaming. So if you have Netflix, please go watch this film.
Well, that was our review for
Super Dark Times.
Have you liked it? Have you seen the movie? Please comment below. Tell us what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it. If you like any of the kids more than the other kids, right?
Yep, I like them all because they're all screwed up one way or another.
Like we all are. Well, this is Black and Yellow Movies. We also have Instagram.
Instagram at Black and Yellow Movies, where we have movie facts. You can stay up to date on what we're doing. We have trailer reactions. You'll know as soon as we do them. We have movie news, all that good stuff. We might start doing Blu-ray releases. Who knows? It's crazy all around here, but stay up to date with us on Black and Yellow Movies on Instagram.
And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.